Mel,
Yeah,
we have a major announcement to make.
go for it.
Did you know that right now all plans on Mint Mobile are what?
$15 a month.
Okay, that's truly ridiculous. Do you know how much regular cell phones are?
Yep.
$1 bazillion a month. 15 is less than that.
New customers get 3 months of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month if you sign up right now. And guess what? I use it. I love it. I've used it all over the country, all over the world, and it's great. And if you're wondering about phones, they have those available as well. Or you can just port your own number and your current phone over to Mint Mobile. They make it so easy.
So if people are interested in trying out Mint Mobile, how can they go about doing that?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. And you know what's interesting? When my dad died, we actually put his phone on a Mint Mobile plan because it kept his number going, but it was $15 a month. So there you go. And there's different storage plans, but you might as well just get the unlimited because it's $15 a month.
Absolutely. All right, go try it today.
That's trymintmobile.com/WWDN.
We have a very exotic guest today, Mel.
Wait.
She probably is from like Connecticut.
Or like Middle America would be better.
Okay. Tulsa? Are you from Tulsa?
I'm not, but close.
Really?
Not really, no, but
Okay.
Middle America is true.
Are you from Indiana?
No, that even closer. You're getting
Oh.
warmer.
Ohio? Iowa.
Illinois.
I win.
Illinois. Okay.
Okay, so our exotic guest from Illinois has a very exotic last name that we just found out a lot of people don't know how to pronounce, which is puzzling because I feel like it's pretty
Standard.
famous.
Yeah.
What is your name, guest?
My name is Cyndi Francois.
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 So
Very
we've taken.
mi-
Go ahead.
I was gonna say very mid.
We've taken turns repeating all the French words we know to Cyndi, and she's just shaking her head. And I think she might want to back out of the recording, but too late. We have her now.
So, Cyndi, this is the first time that we've met you. So, you're from Illinois. Where do you live right now?
I am, and right now I live in Western Washington State, so west of Seattle. Yep.
There's west of
So,
Seattle.
the
Yeah.
ocean?
Yes, pretty much. Actually,
Okay.
and if you can believe it, I'm still about 2 hours from the actual open ocean. So, but I'm right on the Puget Sound area.
I'm so confused right now about my geography.
Maybe Audrey
You're-
can help us. Audrey Henniger, help us.
Maybe a map can help us.
Okay, so Cyndi, just so our audience can get to know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, like growing up, how old are you now, and then we'll get into the bulk of your story after that.
Okay, yeah. So I am 35, and I grew up just in the same house, just in the suburbs, kind of in Chicago. So like 30 minutes from the city, not too far, but we also didn't go there too much. So I would definitely say I'm a suburbs girl. I mean, nothing too crazy really until my husband died. I would say I had a normal life. Went to college for writing. I am doing that for my career now here in Washington, from home, which is really nice. I mean, I really had like a kind of a boring life, to be honest.
It's kind of nice comparatively to widowhood, right?
Yes, it was a huge, very stark difference. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there are things that you liked to do in your childhood that were interesting. Did you do any crafts or sports?
I was in like theater, so I was in drama club. So I
Yes.
played the Wicked Witch of the West, and
I'll get you, my pretties.
yes.
Yes.
So I mean, singing and all that. I was not a sports person. Was when I was a kid, but it kind of grew out of that.
Well, if you were a theater kid, then that means that you had a lot of experiences that were probably fun and colorful.
And probably dramatic too, but unnecessarily so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the part to remember. Yes.
I think it's interesting, Cyndi, because you are a professional writer, right?
I am.
Have you always been a writer in your adult life?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, from high school, I would say that's not really adult, but I was, doing the the yearbook and the newspaper. And then I went to college for journalism. And so I did that with like a minor in like English creative writing. And then after that, I started my first job at advertising agency, kind of like the bottom barrel job, and worked my way up to being their copywriter for big clients like WeatherTech, and we had a bunch of car clients. So, and then I just kept on going with different companies. So my whole life, I feel like I've been writing.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's uncool is you're a widow. So can you tell us about this person who used to be alive?
Yes, I can. I can. His name was Wayne Weimer.
What? It's like my dog, Weimaraner.
Oh yeah, we love those dogs. We always point them out when we see them, out in public. But you could probably see why I wanted, I did keep my last name and with
Yeah.
Francois.
Francois. Yeah.
But yeah, he was a wonderful person. We met in high school at like 15 years old, which sounds like now at 35, like such a lifetime ago. But we met through my boyfriend at the time. They were best friends, and so a little bit of a controversy there, but we ended up starting dating when I was 18 and he was 17, and we dated for 10 years. He went to college with me. He loves, like animals and music, and he was just the funniest person, the funniest, like most selfless person.
Was he a drama kid too?
No, he was
Ah,
not. He was
okay.
more of he was in football, but he hated sports. He hated sports, and his mom made him do it.
Oh man.
But he did. He was, was more of like a low key music type person.
Did you guys move to Washington together, or have you moved to Washington since his death?
So I moved to Washington after he died. We finally got married after 10 years of date, or almost, it would almost have been 10 years of dating, in 2017. So, and then he died 2 weeks after our honeymoon. And
No.
yeah,
Come
and so I
on.
don't even really have anything to say about our marriage because we didn't really have one. We didn't get one. We were only married for 6 weeks. And his death literally came out of nowhere. He was completely healthy, 27 years old. We just thought he had the flu. We went to a wedding that Sunday or that Saturday, and then like we both weren't really feeling good the Sunday afterwards. And so we are kind of like, oh, we're hungover, like it's fine. But he hadn't really been feeling good, kind of off and on, but he just thought it was like the flu. It was, it wasn't anything we were worried about as a 27-year-old healthy guy. And then on Monday, he was like, I'm just going to sleep a little longer, go to work and I'll wake up and go. And I was like, okay. So I went to work, and that day I just had like a really, like this just guttural feeling like that I had never felt before. Like it was just in my pit of my stomach, and I just felt like something was wrong. And he's like, I'm gonna go take a nap. And I'm like, okay, take a nap. And so I texted him my lunch as usual. I would like text him pictures of my lunch every day. And I got no response. And a couple hours went by, and I was like, okay, that's like really not like him. Even though I think he's napping, I'm gonna go home and check on him. So I told my boss that I was leaving, and I left work, and I was like, oh, I'll be back. I'm just gonna go check on my husband. And it's even weird to say because like I'm not used to saying it, but um I got home and everything was just like dead silent. Like everything, like there was just no sound, which was very bizarre. And so I just remember, going up the stairs and going into his room and just finding him dead.
Ugh.
Like just the biggest shock of a lifetime. It's literally the last thing that I was expecting, just like 6 weeks after we had gotten married. Um,
No. Yeah.
And so, as
Oh.
you can imagine, lots happened. And, I didn't end up finding out 3 months later because they did an autopsy. So I had to wait 3 months to see why he had died. And it turns out that he had salmonella in his body. And it like got into his bloodstream and it ended up infecting like several organs and including his heart, which ultimately he had a cardiac arrest and died.
That is so bizarre.
You should have seen both of our faces freeze frame for a long time when you said that. Yeah, Anita is a medical professional, and for her to have that reaction sounds like it's a very strange, rare thing.
He wasn't like really, really like barfing and diarrhea-ing. No.
And that's why it was such a shock because he definitely had some diarrhea, but we were like oh, it's stress from the wedding, like we were going through a lot. It wasn't anything like no puking, no like stomach cramps. It wasn't anything like you would think. And I even was like second guessing. I was like, this can't be it. Like this can't be, it's just not, it doesn't make any sense. And it's still 7 years later, it doesn't really make any sense to me or anyone else who
Hmm.
hears the story. It's just one of those.
It was a sneaky salmonella.
Yes,
Yes. It was
yes,
covert. Wow.
yes, covert salmon. Yep.
I'm telling you, there are just so many things in this world. Sometimes when we're recording this podcast, it makes me feel nervous about being alive because I'm like, you don't even know. You can
I
just
know.
be living your life and you can get sneaky salmonella and then you can be dead. What?
Yes, that's, my anxiety loves thinking about that every day when I'm, touching raw meat or yes,
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
So this is off topic, but sort of on topic. This morning, my daughter texted me. She's like, Mom, I'm feeling really dizzy. And she's texted me this a few times. And I was like, we are going to urgent care right now because your dad said the same thing to me. And I said, you're fine. And then he died. So I'm taking you to the urgent care. So we went to the urgent care and they're like, it's probably not that big of a deal. And I was like, listen, her dad said the same thing to me. And then he dropped dead. And they were like, okay, we'll look at her. So it's just like, you can't, I don't know.
And that's the thing is like once you live this life, you kind of you always carry that with you. Like, depending on how your spouse died, but you always carry that like, well, what if.
Yeah.
So
How old were you?
I was 28.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's definitely changed my entire life and will always be there, as we know.
Right.
The gift
So
that always keeps giving.
you're 28. That's what you just said, right?
I
You're
was,
28.
yes, yep.
Yeah. You're 28. You've been married for 6 weeks. Now you are a widow. So what do you do after that? How do you move forward, go on?
I didn't for a while, and I feel like that's really important to know. And I had no kids. I had no like nothing to kind of keep me going. And that's such a it's like you have kids that keep you going, but you have kids and you can't grieve and like it's all these different things. And I had cats. We had cats together and they kept me going for the first 8 months, literally, to get out of bed and to feed them and to make sure they had water was my purpose for like 8 months. And I still had work for a while. But unfortunately, 6 months after my husband died, our company moved to Florida. So they fired everyone. So I lost my job, which means then I lost our home because I couldn't pay for it anymore. We were renting a townhome at the time. I had not lived with my parents since, before college. So I had to move back with them. I had no other option. I had to move out of our home and move all of our stuff into their garage, basically. And they were just in boxes. And I kind of like just stagnated for a while. And then I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I need to do something. So that's when I decided to just kind of leave. And like everything was such a reminder of him too. It was so hard to be home. Like all my friends, our friends, we were all such a big united group. And going out with them was so painful and everything was just so painful and I just had no job, no house, no anything. I just felt like I had no purpose and I had nothing to live for. So I left. I just packed my car and you know I went on a 10-month road trip and I took my tent and I went to all of the national parks that you could drive through within the United States. And I spread his ashes at every park, and like I went hiking and found just beautiful places and spread his ashes at each one because that's what we like to do together. We love to go outside. We just loved wildlife and we liked to walk in forest preserves and stuff at home. And that was just, we had gone to Yellowstone together and our dream was to travel together. And so I felt like bringing him on this journey with me was in a way like my way of being able to travel with him and kind of like fill out those life dreams that we had together that we ended up not being able to have. So
When you left, is this what you had in mind? Or was it just like, I'm going to drive somewhere and I don't know where I'm going? Or did you have a plan?
I did not have a plan. After my job, like, left and I lost my house, I knew what I wanted to do because I was like, this is kind of the only thing. And like nature was just pulling me in. I had this like magnetic pull. And so I knew that I wanted to just go on the road and live in my car in a tent and go to as many national parks as I wanted, but I did not have a plan. So it kind of just came up out of nowhere. And I did bring a friend with me last minute, was not supposed to be coming with me, but he quit his job and came with me. So there was another person with me on the trip, which is a whole nother story. But
I was going to ask about that because if you are a solo traveler, and especially solo female traveler, and then you're going places where you can camp, sometimes that's not always, you don't feel secure all the time if you're in a tent, I mean, obviously there's animals, but there's lots of murders that can happen
yeah.
too. So I'm glad you had someone with you. I mean, was it okay? I know you said there was another story that went along with that, but
Well,
what can you say?
yeah, what can I say? I mean, I wanted, my goal was like the whole reason to go on this trip for me was to go alone because I felt like I had never really been alone. We were in such a long relationship and I had like small relationships before him and I was like, I need to figure out how to live by myself and like what I'm going to do on my own. And so to get there, I was like, okay, isolating myself out in the wild is like the most alone I can get. And I wanted it so bad. I just wanted to experience because I had never felt this way. I was embarrassed almost of the way that I was acting and grieving. Like I was like, I don't want anyone to see me or anyone to be near me when I'm doing like this. So, then my friend, yeah, he's just like, oh, can I, like if I quit my job, I'll come with you. And this friend was a little bit of a manipulator, I think, and that's the whole other story. But yes, ended up going with him instead, which I regret, but I don't.
Yeah. It's a mixed bag.
hmm
Yeah. You stayed murder free, but you had to deal with the guy.
I did stay murder free, but very, very like close calls, and it was because of who I was with that I was actually not murdered. So that's great. It's a great, and that's in my book. But yeah, there were some crazy things that happened, and I am eternally grateful for those situations that were very dangerous that I put myself through willingly. That I did have another person with me.
Oh my goodness. Okay. We have to ask, what was your favorite national park? Or you can give us top three or top five.
I am never gonna, I feel like I answer this question differently each time because like there's so many, but my number one, and I have to say, is Olympic National Park in Washington, which is why I live here now. I decided I would pick my favorite and move there if I could, and I was able to, which is great. And because it's so diverse, it has the ocean, the coast, it has the mountains, it has a rainforest, it has everything you could ever want. And it's very remote, so not a ton of people have ever gone there. So it's really easy to kind of just disappear and be by yourself. So that's
Oh,
number one.
okay. I love that. I've never been there. Have you been there, Mel?
No.
You have to.
Let's go.
Okay.
If I haven't sold it already, I can. I'll send you pictures.
I do have a trailer, Anita.
That's true. You went on this trip. How long did it take you? How long were you gone?
I was gone for 10 months.
10 months. Oh my gosh. I have a sneaking suspicion, and I might be wrong, but I'm going to predict when you got back, did you still feel like, oh, now I have to go back to a real life and this didn't actually solve, quote unquote, solve any of my problems? Like it was wonderful. I loved it. It was very cathartic. It was very good. But guess what? I
Yes, it
still have
does.
to deal with this.
Yes, I was feeling so I had the worst anxiety knowing I was coming back and knowing I was going to have to basically I just put a pause almost on my grieving for 10 months because I was like, bye, like I can't do this. Like I can't leave. So I had to come back to everything that I had left and it was horrifying. It was very painful. It was a very hard time. And that's I think why I also then left the Midwest and came to Washington for like almost my next adventure because like I was like I still don't really know what I'm going to do.
Well, I'm proud of you for going on that trip. That would take a lot of courage and
Mm-hmm.
guts, and also just trying to run away too. And I, I understand that feeling too.
So
Yeah.
when you got back, what did your life end up doing?
You know, when I got back, I found that I was almost slipping back into that like because I was living with my parents. I was like and I knew they were going to take care of me and so I didn't want to slip into this like do nothing, live with your parents type situation. And so I just kept applying for jobs in Washington and Colorado and San Diego, all my favorite places that I loved. Alaska, which is my favorite, but of course there are no jobs there. But yeah, so I finally found a job right, being in advertising, being a copywriter for a company that actually made products for sudden cardiac arrest, so defibrillators,
Whoa.
so AEDs. So I was actually in charge of survivor stories, producing and writing and interviewing survivor stories, people who have survived sudden cardiac arrests with their products.
Was that good or bad?
It was
I could,
both.
yeah. Because on the one hand, you'd be like, oh, I'm so thankful that these people survived. And on the other hand, you'd be like, why didn't my person survive? Like, why didn't
Yes.
I have this
It was a
miracle or whatever?
it was it messed up my mind. So I only lasted about 3.5 years at that company because I couldn't really do it anymore. Like it was very rewarding, but at the same time, it was like a constant reminder. And I mean, not like I'm not reminded every day, but like at work, which was tough. It's
Hmm.
like, you go to work to, I mean, yeah, I'm thinking similar that you guys maybe feel similar to that, like constantly doing this for your work. I felt like it was almost draining sometimes. Like I was like, I need something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes like when we're doing things, when we're in I guess, a helping profession or a profession that kind of helps other people with feelings and stuff like that. Music is one of those at times. And then podcasting, yeah, we hear a lot of stories that are really sad and we want to be supportive. And then sometimes there have been times where we've been interviewing people and like I had disastrous stuff happen like right before. And so luckily there's two of us and Anita, could kind of take over some of the interview if I was having a hard time. But yeah, it's like you run the risk of, kind of tanking when you're in that
Yeah.
field.
So how long after your 6-week husband did you died? How long did you move to Washington? I don't know if that question made any sense
I
how
think I
I
know where
worded
you're
it.
trying to get. I think I know what
How
you're trying
long
to get
after his death did you move to
at.
Washington?
So, 2 years, about just shy of 2 years.
Okay, so you've been there for a few years now in Washington.
It's been 5 years almost. Yeah.
Did you enjoy having a new start where nobody knew your story, or did you just feel like you needed to tell every person that you met?
Both. I keep saying both to all your questions, but I feel like widowhood, I mean, it's such a like both feeling all the time. It's like I loved it. I loved that I could move away and like no one knew me. They didn't see me as like this pitied like young widow that had like went through all this traumatic stuff. But I also did connect with very few people and was able to be vulnerable, especially at work when I met just a few amazing coworkers and I was able to connect with them over it wasn't the same situation but similar situations and grief is very universal, so that was nice, but I think I wanted to just not be seen or known.
Hey guys, just checking in and want to say if you are enjoying this podcast,
And you want to see it keep going, maybe it's helped you through your widowhood journey and you think that it might help others on their widowhood journey, you can support that cause by joining our Patreon.
some of the things that you get as a Patreon beneficiary are ad-free episodes, so you don't have to hear ads like this.
You also get exclusive content, and at a certain level, you might also get an exclusive t-shirt you can only get that place.
That is true. It's pretty cool. There are 4 different tiers available, so check it out. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
And as an extra bonus, very often you get your names read by one of my kids, and they will do a terrible job with the pronunciation. And that's like a bonus, I think.
I think it's kind of the best. I would much rather hear somebody butcher my name than say it correctly.
A child butcher it than an adult do it correctly. Yep. So go to patreon.com/WWDN to keep our podcast going and support the widowed cause.
Yes! Thanks, guys! Back to our regularly scheduled program.
How do you tell people the first time when you meet them? I know how I do it, and it's usually not a nice way to do it. Are you kind about it, or are you blunt about it and in your face about it?
I think I wait. I'm very passive. I wait unless someone says something like stupid. Like I'll like try to get a little snark in there. But like I feel like I'm very passive about, but that's not the first, that's not, I was not always like that. Like in the beginning, I feel like it was my entire identity. And like it was who I was, like nothing. I was like, hi, I'm Cyndi. I'm a widow. Like it was like what I did, but I don't do that anymore. And that's something recently that I've noticed is that I hold back until it's relevant. If it comes up, if people ask about it, if it's like if everyone's talking about their lives, yes. But other than that, I kind of don't bring it up.
Hmm. I was at a bike race the other day for my son, and this guy was asking me, we'd never met, and he's on the team, and he's like, oh, you know, what's your name? I told him my name, and he said, oh, your last name. And I was like, we're not related to anybody. You don't know any of us. And he's like, but I think I've met your husband. I was like, well, that's weird because he is dead. And the guy was like, dead? And I was like, deceased under the ground, perished.
Oh my gosh. And wait, did he think that he had met him that day that you were talking to?
No, but like in the last little while, like he's like, no, I really think I've met him. I'm like, did you go to the afterworld, like the afterlife, and come back? Like, where do you think
Tell
you
me
met?
how
And
it was.
His
Yeah.
face was just like, I mean, huge eyeballs, and like, I don't know how to respond to this woman. And I was like, it's fine. I'm joking with you. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I would have loved to have seen that guy's reaction.
It was so great. We never did figure out if he met him, but I don't think so, because
Maybe he had a near-death experience, but he was too shocked to tell you about it. You
that's what
never
I
know.
said. I was like, have you had a near-death experience? He's like, no, I sell insurance, you know. Like, it was so fantastic. I kind of love when that happens, to be honest, but that's a me problem.
Okay, so again, gonna ask you this question. Not that we always think that people who are widowed have to repartner, but where are you along that journey?
So I do have a partner. We have been together for about 3 years now. His name is Rob, and we live together in Washington. And that we're not engaged or married. I think I have a lot of trauma. I specifically have a lot of trauma around weddings and marriage, and he knows this, and he's very great about it. But we are definitely committed partners that, you know, we don't need that kind of title to kind of be happy together. So
Did you meet Rob the first try? Because I feel like sometimes that happens, but more often you have to first meet some like weirdos. Did you go through that phase at all?
I went through this phase where I was like, you know, I've never really messed around before. Like I've always had long-term relationships. So this was the phase where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just download a dating app and I'm just gonna mess around. Like I'm just gonna do whatever I want to do. And I can't believe you asked that question because he was the first person.
No.
that I met. But and
Yes.
I was safe because he said that he was poly. And so I was like, okay, this is so safe. I was like, he has other people, he has other things going on. Nothing's gonna happen. I'm gonna get to like have my cake and eat it too, and it'll be great.
And
Well,
just for those who don't know what poly is, because sometimes here like it could mean a Polynesian
oh
person.
yeah, sorry.
So in the
Yes.
no, you're good. In the relationship world, tell our moms what poly means.
So yeah, polyamorous is instead of monogamous, it's just kind of you have multiple partners, and it's okayed with your other partner or your main partner, or you don't it's kind of open. So I've never dealt with anything like that before. I was like, this is something completely new to me, and let's do it. Like, I'm so open right now. I was not looking for anything serious. That was like the last thing on my mind. Turns out that he was currently going through a divorce with his wife, like, because she turned out to be a lesbian. So, like, she had been with him for 10 years and they had a kind of a rough ending. And he was going through some stuff, which is why he was poly. And then, we actually were very good friends for about a year before we started dating, just the two of us.
So you didn't have any like bad dating stories? Like this was just this guy and it all worked out?
I did before that, yes. And that was the same person who did come with me on my road trip. And
Oh,
unfortunately, yeah, he was someone who, I mean, and it kind of just naturally like it's like a situationship is what I called it. It wasn't anything serious, but it just kind of like evolved and because of the situation. And it was very unhealthy. It was very codependent. It was very awful. And so yeah, I did go for 3 years with that spiral.
whoa.
So
I was
I
curious about that because spending 10 months with somebody, like you would either start to hate each other, I feel like, or you would end up in a relationship with each other if
and
like movies are, anything to believe. So I wondered
yeah.
which way. And so you ended up in a relationship with that person and it was not
Yes.
great.
Yes. It was a relationship that I wouldn't even really, it was like I don't even know. Like we both were not serious about it, but like as the time went by, it was. And then I just realized that he was like like really controlling and like he was using me like financially in a whole bunch of other ways. And it was really hard because it's even hard for me to talk about on here because we were friends way before, like we were friends from college. So I've known him as like a friendship for a long time, and to see this other side of him was like huge. And I feel like he really just took advantage of my vulnerability in that time. And like I didn't even care if I was dead or alive, so I didn't care if he was like gaslighting me or abusing me or whatever. I was just like, whatever, like I have someone here and it's fine. Like I just, yes, I fell into this horrible thing. And he also reminded me so much of my husband because they were friends. We were all friends in a friend group, and like we had all the same likes and dislikes. And so it was so easy to talk to him about my husband. Like he was very comforting. He was someone I could talk to for hours about him, which then later turned into, why do you have a picture on the wall of Wayne? Like,
So you knew this person for a long time and you knew Wayne for a long time. So didn't they know each other?
yeah, they
And
were.
so they're
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah, they were friends. We were all just like a friend group, I just most of my friends are guys. They all kind of came from Wayne. And you know, this one like, and he was just like someone we met in college randomly, but he lived near me in Wayne at the time of Wayne's death. And so he was there for me. Like we would hang out after work, and we would, he would keep me company and he'd come and help with chores. And it was like this kind of like he helped, and like we hung out and we kind of kept each other company through our grief situation. And if that would have never happened, we would have never even looked twice at each other, type of thing.
How did you figure out that it was not a good situation? Like what had to change for you to go, "Oh, like this isn't good for me."
I think I knew immediately, even before we
Mm.
left on the trip, like my gut kind of was like, you don't really feel safe around this person. But I thought it was just my grief. I didn't feel safe at all around anyone.
Right.
Like,
Like in your own skin, you're like,
yeah.
nothing's safe. You can get sneaky salmonella
Yeah,
and
I
be dead.
felt so unstable. And so I was like, okay, well, this is someone I had known for so long. There's no way it was like gonna hurt me. Like he's been so helpful. But then little things, just as the trip went, little situations started happening where he would like manipulate and lie and gaslight and like try to use me. And if I would say no to buying him something, he would like throw a tantrum in public. And like, so things like that started escalating and started happening more often all the time. And we just ended up like fighting every day. And, all said and done, all throughout all those years, the last straw was it did get physical. So, I mean, and I should have known before. And I did know, but I didn't care. But once it became physical, that was it for me. I just kicked him out. So,
I'm glad that you were able to do that because sometimes when people are in abusive relationships, it takes like 7 times to actually leave the relationship, and it can be a scary time. So that's hard to listen to your intuition that you've continually bypassed, but you're also having it layered with grief. It's just, how do you even know? So
Yeah. And
yeah.
you
good
stop
job.
trusting your intuition, I think, a lot as a widow because I don't know, sometimes you can feel like, well, it failed me. Like I should have known that something was really wrong with my partner, or just like everything that I've known and trusted has not worked out. And so I can't believe anything that I know or trust anymore, even though
Totally.
you probably still can. It's just really hard to do. And it's easy to probably look back on it and say, I should have known, I should have seen the signs. But like, I mean, you just had your whole life exploded. So it's not surprising that you couldn't do it at that point in time.
Yeah, I was like that energy, like that battery, I just didn't have it. I just like I
Mhm.
couldn't even make decisions. Like it was like the kind of point where I was just going along and like I literally felt like I was floating around in the wind most of the time, like in a fog. And so I don't blame myself because I always said I would never get into you know an unhealthy relationship. I would never let anyone treat me like that, but I did at my most vulnerable point because I didn't feel like I had any other choice at that point. But
So when you got in a relationship with your new person, or your new person, that sounds terrible, with the current person, tell us what the contrast was like between the former relationship and then this one that I'm assuming is healthy, because
yes.
otherwise
I would
Run,
you're
Cyndi,
probably, yeah,
run.
otherwise let's get you out. No.
Yeah, no, I learned my lesson and I had a huge walls up for many years with Rob, which is the new person. And I, you know, I was so afraid that he was going to be really great in the beginning and then change because that's like exactly what had happened. And I was like, I don't even know why I'm doing this, which is why I think I started off with just, I want to play around, no commitments. I just want to just have like companionship, and that's where it is. And I didn't want that. And so this new relationship, it just the amount of time we spent as friends was my indicator. Like, but not just because I said I've been 10 years friends with the other guy for 10 years, but it was like I spent close quarters with him like throughout a really hard situations for both of us for a whole year, and he was always so patient, so great, so breath of fresh air. I don't know. It's so hard. It was literally like the opposite of what I was in. And so at first I was like, this is just fake. This is like love bombing, but it wasn't. And so now, like 3 years later, it still feels the same. And he hangs up pictures of Wayne around the house and he buys frames.
He's the one who's hanging him up, and you're like, why is this picture of Wayne in the bathroom?
Yeah, yeah, literally above our bed, he hung up engagement pictures of
Oh.
me and my late husband above our bed, which is like the most intimate, spot you could argue. And like, so I think that's like the biggest, like you hot and cold, like towards the end of the other relationship, the other guy was like, why do you have a picture of Wayne up? And then this one is putting him up everywhere. And that's every day. That's the
I have
difference.
just had a lightning bolt strike my brain.
What?
Okay, Rob said he's polyamorous, right?
He was, not
Well,
anymore.
no,
Yes.
I
Oh, yes.
argue he still is, and he's in love with Wayne too. And
Oh,
please tell him I said that.
I will. I think that's the best case scenario.
You guys are in a ghost threesome.
I love that because people literally ask me, what are you gonna do when you're all dead and in heaven? Like, who are you gonna pick? And like, people ask the stupidest
Silly
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and that's so funny because that's a great answer.
We solved it.
Yeah.
Cyndi, what would you say to people who may be in the position that you were several years ago, where you're like, I am just too broken and I don't know if I can even deal with this? Or like sometimes Anita and I have just said, like, we can't even imagine moving forward because we're just, in our brains are just at our life situations. What would you say to somebody who's kind of in that earlier stage post widowhood that might not believe that it's possible? Anita, I hear we have a store.
Oh, we sure do. We've actually had it for quite a while. It's called the Snarky Grief Shop, and it's where you will find all of our best grief merch. That is, yes, a little snarky. For instance, it's where you will find the official widow card that you can pull and use at your convenience.
You can put it in your wallet, and anytime you need to use it, pull it out, play the widow card.
Yeah, we have glow-in-the-dark stickers. We have shirts that say, "Be nice, my husband is dead." We also have the ones that are not quite as jarring, so that you can wear them out in public and not feel weird. But sometimes you need that shirt.
I wear my "Be nice, my husband is dead" to bed because I'm a little scared to go in public with it. But you've worn it on airplanes before with your kids.
Yeah, every time we go to the airport, I wear that shirt because I'm just like, listen, I got to get all these kids through security. Just be nice to me. Thank you so much. And it's worked for the most part.
Some of the less snarky grief shirts are podcast shirts or Widow Wives Club. We also have Resilient AF, right, Anita? What else we got in there?
Yeah, which we're telling everybody who cares, like Mel's mom, that means American fork, because she can't know what it really means, guys.
Yeah.
Stickers and mugs and notebooks and just cool stuff that you can use to express your snarky grief. You'll find it by going to our website, shop.widowwedonow.com. There's a lot of W's in there, so just make sure that you've counted them and there's the right number.
We will link to that in the show notes, and it's also in our app, which you can get from the App Store. Can people get it from our regular website too?
Yes, if you go to widowwedonow.com, there's a link for the shop in there too.
Great. If you'd like to show your snark or have something a little more subtle, go ahead and check that out. Again, that's
shop.widowwedonow.com.
I would just say that I thought that same way. I know a lot of people who have, and I think none of us are really like looking necessarily when things kind of like fall into place. And I will say that like my life was very full after Wayne died and before I met Rob. Like I am like traveled on my own. I went, like I would eat at restaurants by myself. I have a job that I'm independent and lived on my own. And, like I feel like I built those skills for myself that I can only rely on myself. And I feel like because I can rely on myself, I don't need to depend on anyone else. And that gives me a lot of room to be choosy and picky with who I have in my life. And I feel like that makes it really important to make sure you have good people in your life, to make sure you're moving forward and you're never going to move on. Every single day I cry still. It's been 7 years and I am not at the point to where I can say I'm happy all the time. I'm not, but I can do things that help that. And, I don't know. I always am a loss for words with this question because it's so hard, especially in the beginning.
I liked how you answered that though.
Yeah, that
I
was
think
perfect.
that was fantastic. So tell us about the book that you've written. I want to hear more about how it came about and is it good or is it terrible?
It's terrible.
Okay, perfect.
I hate it. No, I actually do hate it though in several ways.
Oh, okay.
Why?
No, the first thing I wanted to do when I got it, the sample, like holding it in my hands was to burn it.
Mhm.
That was the first reaction I had because I was like, this is just full of
The worst.
horrible things.
Yeah.
But it's called I have it Traveling Through Grief. I mean, it's
Mhm.
probably
Ooh,
not.
I love the cover. That's cute.
Yeah, I do
Thanks.
too.
Yeah, Life, Death, and 10 Months in a Tent. And it starts off with Wayne's death and then it just follows the journey into all the national parks and I literally slept in a tent for 10 months and it talks about all those adventures and it talks about the, abusive relationship at parts and it's definitely not the focus, but I really wanted to make it seem like there's no cure for this. I think a lot of the grief books kind of follow this formula of like step by step, like step one, step two, like this is how you heal from grief.
Mhm.
And like I know I will never heal from grief. And so I left it open-ended at the end because there's no resolution. And I feel like I think a lot of people who have read it that have been grieving they've appreciated that aspect, that it doesn't end with like a perfect
A
bow.
cure. It's not curative. It's not meant to fix
Yeah.
you or fix other people. How is your back okay after sleeping in a tent for
I
10
was
months?
also gonna ask that. Yes.
Actually, you're going to be surprised because I felt like I have never felt better. Like I lost 70 pounds on that trip. I was hiking every day and sleeping on like a harder surface. Like I felt younger than I had. And I mean, I felt so great. Like coming back, it
This
was
is
like,
confusing
have you ever seen
me.
Castaway when he
Yes, I
comes back?
actually was thinking about that.
That's how I felt when, he was with the lighter and he's like, oh, it's so easy. And he slept on the floor next to his bed. That's how
Yes.
I felt because it was like home almost.
Cyndi, where can somebody find your book if they would like to buy it or read it? And can they listen? What are the options?
Yes. So there's all a bunch of options except for listening. I'm working on an audiobook right now, but it's on Amazon. It's on barnesandnoble.com. It's on anywhere online where you can get books. And then locally, but there's no one who lives here. Local, I have three bookstores that it's in. Working on that as well. But yeah, anywhere online.
I'm curious about how long it took you to write it because just like when you said you hated it, I kind of secretly kind of feel that way about things sometimes too. Like you love it and also it's very vulnerable and you're talking about the hardest thing you've ever went through. And so like tell us a little bit about the process.
Yeah, it took me 6.5 years.
Oh, just a small bit of time.
Yeah, just a little blip of time. I recently published at the end of May,
Oh,
beginning of
okay.
June, and I started it on my road trip because a lot of it is pulled from journals and things that I actually wrote on the trip. So I used those and I went back to that and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done was writing this book because it just kept drawing me back in and I just didn't want to not do it justice, but I don't know, I was dedicating it to Wayne. There was so much pressure and there were so many things in this book that are so personal and things that I'm like, "Oh my God, I did that? Like I acted that way?" That I didn't want people to read, especially my family. I didn't want anyone to read it, but I was like, this is so important because this is why it's important, is because
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to read it. And this is what connects with other widows is those parts that are so vulnerable that they need to read because they need to know that they're not alone.
On the flip side of that, are you also like, I can't believe I did that, but in the good way? Like, holy crap, I'm amazing.
Sometimes it doesn't even feel real. Like I'm just like, what has this last 7 years like, this, like especially with COVID thrown in, I'm just like, has this life even existed? Yeah, like I think back and I'm like, wow, like I can't believe I did that. I really can't. And I think it's because I literally had nothing else to live for. Like I was chasing adrenaline. I was chasing to feel alive. I needed to feel something. And that trip helped me, and that, writing it in this book for other people to read helped as well. It was like getting it all out of my brain in a way.
Yeah. So you said that you don't necessarily like you still cry every day and you're not happy every day, but do you think that generally life is good for you now?
Yes, I
Okay.
do. I mean, especially from the outside. I mean, I like when I think about it, I'm so grateful and blessed for the things that I have, but I will never forget that I only have these things because Wayne died
Mm.
and because I went through the worst thing that I will ever go through, and he's gone. And I have a tremendous amount of guilt, which I know I shouldn't, but we all deal with that. And I would say that my life is great, but there's always a rain cloud over everything that happens. Everything that happens is less than it could be. And
Mm.
I feel like I have this constant like apathy to things that I never had before that I don't think will ever go away.
Cyndi, we ask everybody this question, so we're not sure if you're familiar with how we do our podcast, but this is the question. It's very important. What's your favorite cheese? And if you don't like cheese or can't have cheese,
Please,
replacement.
please explain.
Yeah.
I love all cheese. If I had a dairy allergy, I don't know if I would be here because it's so important to me. uh Gouda, I love like a smoked Gouda. I mean, I'm just gonna give that. I could name all of the cheeses, but that one comes to mind.
Gouda, I think, is the most often named favorite cheese. And
Really?
there's a reason. Yeah. I mean, it's good.
Because it's amazing.
It's Gouda. We already made that joke once. We can't do it again.
Yeah.
People will remember. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining us today. I really look forward. I want to read your book. I think it's going to be good. So, thank you for sharing that with the world, and thank you for sharing your story. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
Everybody, if you would like to keep the podcast going, you know what I'm going to say, right? You need to join our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
Or you could buy us tacos at buymeacoffee.com/widow we do now.
And you can always give us a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We are always confused about the Apple Podcast algorithm, but we need help in that area. So when you listen, when you tell friends to listen, when we get reviews, somehow it's helpful. The gods have decreed it.
You can also share your favorite episode. So, for example, if Cyndi's episode is your favorite, you can go post it on your social media or send it to friends. Share it. Help the world.
Cyndi, you best be posting this on social media. So help me.
I will. Absolutely.
Okay, until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Cyndi.
And we are just two young widows and one young widow who has some strange magical back from sleeping on the floor for 10 months straight. And we're all just trying to figure out, widow,
We
do
now.
One of the questions we get asked the very most is, do you have a therapist you can recommend for me? And while we wish that we knew of therapists in every single place, in every single part of the country, we don't. So what do we tell them instead, Mel?
We say check out BetterHelp because it's online, it's at a reasonable price, and you can be matched with a therapist within 24 hours. I've also used them and they have been great. And if you don't like your therapist, guess what? Click, click, and get a new one.
Absolutely. It's so hard when you have an in-person therapist, if you're not clicking with them, to cut them off and get a new one. So that's not an issue with BetterHelp. So we always tell people to try BetterHelp. And if you use our promo code, which is
trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month.
go ahead and try it out. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. And you know what? I'm a big fan of doing therapy where you don't have to wear pants, but nobody knows about it.
Are you wearing pants right now, Mel?
I'll see you later. Bye. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.